We talk about Deshaun Watson. We're going to keep talking about him. When I ask people, what's the deal with Watson? They say, why would the Texans trade him? You think about it. If you're Houston, if you give up a stud QB, you're going to want a stud QB in return. And look at the field. Who can do that? A couple teams. Jacksonville with the number 1 pick. The Jets, although we've heard from Schefter and Mortensen that that's not going to happen. And Miami. So if you're another team, you might have the draft picks, but do you have a stud QB to give the Houston Texans? I don't know.
Well, that's one of the questions. When you mentioned the piece about Schefter and Mort, they're talking about the role that Deshaun himself will play in this decision. He may not be so enthusiastic about going to the Jets, but to your point, yes, they do have a lot they can offer.
How could he not, Greeny? How could he not? You're Jets. You're Jets.
My fandom is probably the single best thing they have going for them right now, but that's a whole separate issue for another time. But Tim Hasselbeck, you were making an interesting point, because I think we have talked about Deshaun Watson, and by we, I mean the larger we, everyone around the world of football, as though he is basically already a former Texan. But you were making the point in our meeting this morning, maybe there is a case to be made for them not trading him.
Well, listen, you would have to get a lot in return, and look at the compensation for Matthew Stafford. Watson is a younger, ascending player who's under contract for a while, and so if you're the Texans, look, it better be a king's ransom to move him. And I understand the bad blood, but there's a new regime there. There's a new GM, there's a new head coach, and I would be doing everything possible to try to salvage the relationship, because when you really look at it, look, it really comes down to one issue. He was upset about how it was communicated to him about his involvement in the hiring of the new GM and head coach. So if you can't get past that, then I think that's a problem. I think you need to try to get past that, and I would be really reluctant if I was Nick Caserio, if I was David Culley, in terms of moving on from Watson because he seems unhappy right now.
All right, so you're Nick Caserio now, Mike Tannenbaum. How are you handling this? You have continuously made the point on this show that with every day that goes by, they have a bigger and bigger problem. So there's whatever urgency you're feeling on that side, and then there's the hope that it doesn't ever go away on the other side. So how do you handle it?
Right. What's catastrophic for them is if they don't do something now, Greeny, and then they get into September and he doesn't show up, much what happened with Jalen Ramsey in Jacksonville. So if I'm Nick Caserio, I sit down with Deshaun Watson, his agent, I try to work it out. If I can't, I cut my losses right now and maximize the compensation I should get. Because again, worst case scenario, we get into the season, you're trying to establish a new head coach in David Culley, you don't have the player, and now all of a sudden, you don't have anybody else behind him because you thought he was going to be his quarterback. That is the worst case scenario. And Greeny, there's another big intangible here. There's not going to be any free agent who has a choice that's going to go to Houston right now until this situation is clarified.
Yeah, so they have all sorts of things lined up against them. But Kimberley, you were making the point, as we were talking earlier, that if they call his bluff, and I put that in air quotes because I don't think most people think he's bluffing, but if they do, they really do put the ball in his court to the extent that he's got to do a lot of things this fall, if he's still on that roster, that would seem to be out of keeping with his personality.
Yeah, people that know Deshaun, they describe him, he's a good kid. That's the first thing they say. We've seen the work that he's done in the community. He was just doing stuff this weekend. This is a guy that cares about the city of Houston, that cares about his teammates, a good locker room guy. So if you're the Houston Texans, that August, September, is he going to show up? That's the real key. I don't know if anyone expects that Deshaun will not show up because that seems so, quote, out of character. But if you're the Texans right now, you can say, okay, maybe we didn't hire the GM you wanted or the head coach, but what we have in David Culley is a guy who is respected around the league, an experienced guy, a guy that we brought in who we think can make you and this team better. And Nick Caserio, who may not have been your choice, but has been a coveted GM candidate for a long time. So if that's, Houston can say, we have these pieces to make the situation better for you.
All right, we will see. As of right now, he doesn't seem to be willing to give them a chance. Maybe he will ultimately have no choice.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.